Hiya, so Gemma here from Healing Gems. So today I'm going to talk to you about the causes of chronic fatigue. Now there is much debate about this in the medical world about what causes chronic fatigue in individuals. I have done a lot of research into chronic fatigue in order to heal myself, and outside of the medical profession, with all the alternative therapies and holistic therapies, and even the clinics like the Gupta program, like the lightning process, they all sort of have a very common methodology of what causes chronic fatigue. And just looking at my own past history and other people I know who have chronic fatigue and what's happened to them in the lead up to the chronic fatigue, then these are the factors I believe to cause chronic fatigue. And it will be different in everybody because obviously everyone is different and people react to things differently, so the triggers will all be different in some shape or form. So generally there is the people who get chronic fatigue, and I did a video on this about being highly sensitive people. Generally people's makeup, if you were to have like the scale of empath to psychopath, you would probably find that most people with chronic fatigue are way down on the empathic side of the scale. So maybe they're an empath, maybe they're just highly sensitive, maybe they're just sensitive, but you generally find the sort of people, the type of personality that gets chronic fatigue will be those kind of highly sensitive people. And you probably have a predisposition within your genetic makeup to this kind of thing, and that is more within what they call mitochondria, which is basically their energy cells within. I mean, obviously I'm not a scientist and I'm not a biochemist, but they're like the energy power packs that we have in every cell of our body. So there's probably some genetic thing around that we have a predisposition to be having maybe like low mitochondria levels. But then there's also things like emotional issues that probably build up. So if you imagine your body as like a boat, and everything that happens to you in life, whether it's sort of like an emotional trauma, so maybe splitting up with a husband or a boyfriend, or getting fired from your job, all of those kind of things, they are traumas. Whether they're a big trauma or they're a small trauma, they all start to stack up. And then maybe you've got a busy job, and you've got quite a stressful job. Again, they're all little traumas that start to build up on top. And then you have things like family life. If you've got kids, then obviously there's sort of lots of rushing around, worrying about your children. So all these things start to stack up and stack up and stack up. And there's only so much any one person can take. It might be that you do lots of physical activity, so you might be running a lot or doing like weightlifting, or so anything quite hardcore physically, again, that puts another toll on the body. So add all of these things together. If you're a highly sensitive person as well, you do absorb problems on a deeper level than someone else who maybe is at the other end of that scale. So all of this builds up within the body, and if you're not taking care of yourself by resting, getting adequate rest, eating all the right foods, getting proper rest and relaxation, i.e. sort of meditation, then the body then starts to go into sort of like this fight or flight mode, and then you're operating on this like higher level of anxiety, that you probably don't even realise that you're there. And then it probably just takes one trigger to tip the balance over the edge. So for me, yeah, I had a lot. I was, training, running a lot. I was training for like half marathons. I really did push myself in my training. I probably wasn't eating as well as I could have been. Probably wasn't drinking enough water. I was working really, really hard. I had quite a stressful job. I'd always be putting in extra hours. I would never take breaks. There was unfortunately a couple of deaths within my family, which obviously were very hard to take. And then there was sort of relationship breakups and things like that. So there was a lot of stuff going on, sort of like just bubbling away under the surface. And then, as I said, I was doing a half marathon, and I was training all the way through the winter months, because it was in January, and it was very, very cold. Like when I did the half marathon, I was starting to get, sort of weird aches and pains and things like that, which I just put down to running too much. But it was literally after the half marathon that I started to become unwell. So that for me was the thing that tipped the balance over to chronic fatigue. So a lot of people experience like an illness, like glandular fever, for example. There's lots of talk about glandular fever causes chronic fatigue. That might be like the final straw that broke the camel's back, as they say, but it won't be the cause of the chronic fatigue. There would have been a lot more stuff going on before you got glandular fever that would contribute to you getting chronic fatigue. So generally, in the past, when I've gone to some of these clinics that specialise in chronic fatigue, they map out, they ask you to sort of like map out everything that happened to you maybe in the last sort of 5 years that you can think of was either a big trauma or a little trauma, and write all of this stuff down, because then it really does become clear and evident probably how you've ended up in this situation in the first place. And it's nobody's fault. No one knows that they have probably a predisposition to this kind of condition, because someone could be doing exactly the same thing as you and not suffer at all. But it's just like, it's what your body can take. Everyone has a limit, and unfortunately, probably the majority of people that suffer from chronic fatigue, maybe they have a lower threshold of like the stress that they can take and manage before it tips over into the balance of chronic fatigue. Okay, so as we said, it could be emotional triggers or emotional trauma. It could be physical trauma and triggers, mental, like we said, like working very hard, stressful jobs, having a lot of pressure put on us in our working and home life. Lack of good sleep, if you're not getting the required amount of sleep that your body needs, then that can help contribute towards chronic fatigue. As we said, a personality trait, most people will be on the more like sensitive spectrum. Probably gut problems, like I just did a video on digestion, so it could be that in the past you've had trouble digesting food, and as we said, sometimes it's not what you eat, it's what you absorb. So if you're not absorbing all of the good nutrients into your body, then obviously your body's not going to be able to function as well, and it's not going to be able to repair itself as well. So that's always an underlying factor. Like a lot of the stuff, the theory that you will read about chronic fatigue starts saying it's like leaky gut, or it's all to do with your stomach. And that may have an element of truth around it, that it is probably a contributing factor. If you're not digesting food very well, then obviously, yes, you're not going to get all the nutrients from it that you need, but it won't be a single factor. Generally, there isn't one single thing that makes you have chronic fatigue. It will be a number of things all lumped together that then trigger it off. So toxic environment, people may work somewhere which is live or work somewhere that's highly polluted. So you're getting a lot of toxins into the body. It might be that you live near, a motorway or a train track, or in a highly densely populated area where there's a lot of toxins around. Some people, you know, they can't handle toxins like cleaning sprays or perfumes. They trigger off some sort of allergic reaction within the body. So it can be something as simple as that. A lot of people who get chronic fatigue in the past have had thyroid problems, different kinds of allergies. Again, it could be, again, like I said, anything sort of emotional that triggers it off. You know, if you feel like you're not coping emotionally, or it might be that you also have another condition within the body or the mind. So it could be like you have anxiety or anxiety related conditions such as OCD, bipolar, depression. All of those can be real contributing factors to getting chronic fatigue, especially if you've had them in the past. Okay, so that is a real very quick summary of the different things that could cause chronic fatigue. And as I said, it's not just going to be one thing, it will be multiple things that have probably happened over a number of years. I know mine was probably over about a 10-year period where I'd been getting sort of different symptoms within the body that were a bit unusual, but you know, I just figured I didn't know what was going on. I seemed to be all right up until the point, you know, where I sort of really was pushing myself in all aspects of my life, and then that tipped the balance over to chronic fatigue. Most people that I know of or have read about, they get some sort of illness like glandular fever or the flu or something, which is sort of like the final trigger to chronic fatigue. So they are, I'm not saying that's all of them, but they are some of the common things that would be going on with you, and may help for you to, you know, reflect back over the last sort of year or so, you know, what's been going on for you in your life, you know, how you've been living your life, diet, work, relationships, and also on the toxic environment. That doesn't actually just have to be toxic chemicals, it could be toxic people, you know, people that are no good for you, that are negative, that put you down, that don't make you feel good about yourself. You could be in a very toxic relationship. So, you know, all of those things will have an impact upon you and your body as well. Okay, any questions? As usual, put them below, and I will see you soon. Bye.